To my friend Rand Paul, when you join Democrats to oppose Trump's positions on things, that is where the friendship stops. You have taken positions where you are the only Republican supporting it, and it is usually against the president. In this political chess game, don't be so blind and rigidly beholden to philosophies in the midst of an existential war that you stubbornly pursue a losing strategy. You don't seem to know who the enemy of freedom is. You are becoming alienated from your Kentucky constituents and making Kentucky an enemy to the White House, which your constituents supported by well over 60%. Hey folks, well, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. You know, as I reflect back on my life and all the people I've known, associated with, and been in business with, it is quite extensive. That includes Americans of every creed and ethnicity, Russians, Ukrainians, Hungarians, Iranians, Brazilians, Mexicans, Cubans, South Koreans, and Chinese. I have one of the most diverse lists of friendships of anyone that I know. The color hues look like paint samples from Home Depot, insofar as who I've dealt with and in relationship with. The accusation of prejudice, racism, and white privilege will never be thrown my way by an honest person. Now, there is a qualifier, and that is honest person. The left doesn't possess that quality. Frankly, I don't care. I have actually seen studies revealing that the left and liberals are innately more prejudiced against African Americans and Asians than others. And that's no surprise to me, and hopefully not to too many of you. It's just an observation that is easily made if you just listen and look. And of course, historically and empirically, we have seen that play out. You see, folks, they call you these names to deflect from who and what they really are. You have heard it said that liberals and leftists are the greatest projectionists. Now, that's a psychological term, which means that you accuse others of what you are or are doing. This is a perfect description of the Democrat left. Here's a perfect and most current example. The government shut down by the Democrat left. They will blame it on the Republicans, but in the Senate, it takes 60 votes to reopen the government. There are only 53 Republicans, 52 of which of the 53 voted to open the government back up. Now, that one holdout Republican I will talk about later. People are slowly realizing it is the Democrats keeping things shut down, particularly after some of the Democrats admitted that they were keeping it shut down. Why? The left is extorting $1.5 trillion from Republicans so as to offer medical care to illegal aliens and to push them in front of the line, which will only attract more Democrat voters. Yeah, you heard that right. More Democrat voters crossing the border into this country. Why is this, you ask? Well, most humans, and particularly the poor from other countries, lack critical thinking, so they easily cling to empty promises. And we know how the devil is full of them. And by the way, the devil is a Democrat. He wrote their platform. Just read it. Furthermore, the Democrats want to pay for circumcisions in Africa and queer agendas in South America and every other kind of perversity you can think of. So there is your example of projection and how the Democrat left cloaks itself in a false compassion. Really, folks, this is a simple math problem, and it is clear we need 5 to 7 Democrats to vote to open the government. It's so frustrating that, and particularly when you talk to some people and they just reflexively say that it's a Republican's fault. Well, when you explain it to them, who caused it, and that the Democrats are the ones that are holding the government or shutting the government down, and you explain the numbers to them, they go, oh, well. But these are the non-thinkers. But the problem with the non-thinkers in this country is that they've been taught that way in our public education system, and they vote. And they're the ones that help create all the misery, because we got a lot of wicked people that know how to talk to these people to get elected and into office. Well, I could go on and on with that, so let's get into the topics of today. Now, here's a quote from my dear friend Virgil Walker, who I have known for years and broken bread with many times. And here's his quote, I just love it. When wolves prowl the village, peace isn't found in a prayer circle. It's found in the man who remembers he carries a sword. Far too long the West forgot. We traded the blade of justice for bureaucratic bluster, the roar of conviction for the whimper of appeasement. Evil took note. It built armies, burned churches, and crucified Christians, while the civilized world wrote sternly worded letters. But something has shifted. For the first time in a long while, a world leader is speaking as if he still believes evil should fear good. The same man who ended wars others started, who brokered peace through strength and not through apology, now looks at Nigeria's slaughtered believers and says, enough. And you know who I'm talking about there. Well, thank you, Virgil, for saying that so eloquently. Building on that quote, remember when Biden told Putin prior to the invasion of Ukraine, don't. Can you imagine the President of the United States just told this warmonger, Putin, don't, as if Biden could scare anybody? That was Biden's strong word. It was Kamala Harris's as well. These were weak and corrupt people in leadership, and we put them there. And that's why they brought so many people across the border, because they want more Democrat voters like that to keep them in office. Biden will face judgment for all his public sins, as he has the blood of over 1 million young men and women on his hands. This is something most missed. In Biden's last 2 weeks in office, he flew an Air Force One at great cost to you under the pretense that he was going to give a Marxist pope the Medal of Freedom. That was a really weak and transparent excuse for the real purpose. He went to get absolution for all his corruption and sins. And what is laughable is he was asking a Marxist pope for that. Sorry, guys, you can't fool God. Francis is feeling the flames now, and Biden will soon. Now, as you know by now, much of what I do and say in my podcast is to strip away the veil of deception and corruption so you can understand the agenda of the Democrat left, and their agenda is never in your best interest, only theirs. They have no solutions to any problems. They create the problems. I consider the Democrat left enemy combatants against America, and you best start seeing them in the same way. If civil war occurs in this country, it is because good people did nothing to stop it. As I set forth in my book, America's Systemic Psychosis, the term psychosis is a detachment from reality. We know the Democrat left is not only detached from reality, trying to turn boys into girls, but they are demonic when you look at the dozens of demonic positions they take. And isn't it strange that so many of them revolve around sex? I challenge anyone to come up with what the Democrat left stands for. What have they offered you that works or that you are not going to pay for? The Democrat left hates America and the average American. They were taught that in school, and many of you paid for it. Many of you moms and dads paid for it because you weren't paying attention what the teachers were abusing your children with mentally. The Democrat left is populated with hateful, resentful malcontents. It's not debatable. Replay the tapes. Every protest and every time they get in front of the cameras, they demean this country and have a long list of pejorative names for you. Just last week, Elon Musk said that civil war in England is inevitable. And now those Brits who supported the liberals in that country now have a country that is nearly governed by Islam. Can you imagine that? I would have never believed that. Just 20, 30 years, no one would have ever believed that. Every major city in England has a Muslim mayor, and a majority of London is Muslim. Out of a population of 66 million, only 6 million are Muslim, yet they're ruling. That's how stupid the white liberals and devastating and demonic the white liberals are. They deliver disaster. This is not just shameful, it is damnable. And England is under judgment, and the price is going to be in blood, unfortunately. Now, what about this country? America is going the same way, and Trump is the only thing stopping what has happened in England. I have been giving you a weekly taste of what makes up the Democrat left in this country in hopes that you will stop toxically tolerating those who support the party in destroying your country. Bringing it home really quickly here, many of you voted for Andy Beshear for governor. Now, this has a national implication, too. His policies are identical to Nancy Pelosi's. How could you be this way? How could you have ever voted for a guy like this? How could this be, you say? Well, you were not paying attention. And I do lay a good deal of blame in Kentucky at the feet of the libertarians and their group in this state. Libertarian ideology is dangerous, and it always benefits the very thing they say they oppose. It benefits evil. Now, here's another anti-American serving in Congress. Given he is from the godless Northeast, and in this instance, Connecticut specifically, it's no surprise that Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut, who serves as the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said that MAGA voters who cheer the Trump administration's military strikes on alleged drug boats in the Eastern Pacific would not like who a potential President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez chooses to kill. Think about that. You see, the left speaks with intimidation, but worse than that, they mean it. Folks, when someone tells you they want to kill you, you need to take them seriously. The Democrat left cannot tolerate dissent, and they will do anything to you, including kill you, to shut you up. They nearly accomplished that with Trump, and they did assassinate Charlie Kirk. Moreover, the Democrat left always takes the side of our enemies, and they always talk about due process, not because they want fairness, but because they want justice delayed and denied. The chaos benefits them. The Democrats are empirically anti-American, and that is why I view them as enemy combatants, and we must start calling them out. Himes is from Connecticut and the spiritually dead northeast of this country. He, like all the other Democrats, want due process for our enemies. Why? Because they know their appointed judges will drag the case out for years and eventually let them off, let the criminals off. We see it every day. It is virtually impossible for any liberal or leftist wearing the black robe to be fair and impartial because they have a Machiavellian worldview. Whatever means they use, no matter how corrupt, is justified by the end result, according to them. But they don't even know what the end result will be, other than their own grip on power. Folks, if you know your scripture, these demonically influenced people must be resisted, challenged, and removed from power. Your slothfulness, your indolence, and laziness in living in denial of an existential threat is a psychosis itself and will be met with the judgment of defeat and bloodshed. And I'm wanting to avoid that. You can stop a civil war from coming to this country, but you are almost too late. We need a strong conviction to overcome the leftist infection in this country and a massive reaction to the abundant evidence of the Democrat left's traitorous conduct. They are already telling you what they will do to you if they get back into power. As you will recall from my last podcast, I told you what that California reprobate representative, Eric Swalwell, who was having an affair with a Chinese spy, said as to what he and other Democrats were going to do once they got back into power. Don't wait. Let's start a bloodless revolution now so it stays bloodless and expose and prosecute and oust those America haters like Himes, AOC, Schumer, Cohen, Murphy, Swalwell, and the list goes on. There is no sane, civil, and moderate Democrat, save maybe Fetterman of PA, but I say that cautiously given the totality of his voting record. Let's not turn into England. Let's act now while we still can. Now, as I hope I have made clear in my articles and previous podcasts, I'm eliminating any excuse that any sane and moral person could have in supporting the radical Democrat left. So in furtherance of that, let me give you just one more example. During this government shutdown, which the number 2 Democrat in the House admitted to being political and theirs because that was their only leverage, even though it was going to cause families to suffer, this is what they did. And they don't care if families suffer. It's all about their power. In the meantime, our men and women in uniform were not going to get paid. Oh, but because they are essential, they have to work without pay. Now, how many of you would put up with that for even one day? How many of you have a Democrat senator that has not heard from you? You need to go online and look up your state and federal office holders, both your state senator and state representative, your federal senator and your federal representative. Get their phone numbers online and give them an earful. Tell your neighbors and friends and plan to campaign. Tell them that you plan to campaign against them and let them know that you're going to form a neighborhood group and do it. But think about this. Thanks to Trump, he got a donor to put up $130 million to make sure our military who protects us got paid. Every one of us should feel ashamed and outraged at the Democrat left. Just give that some thought. Your president did what no other president or individual should have to do, and that is pay the troops out of donations because the Democrats couldn't care less. Just remember, they want to defund the police, and they never have liked the military unless they can engage them in endless wars. It is difficult to come up with a pejorative term bad enough to describe the depravity of the Democrat left. Folks, I again refer to the Democrat Party as an enemy combatant and guilty of treason. They are the worst of the worst. Even worse is the Democrats who try to blame the Republicans for the shutdown. As I said earlier, it takes 60 votes to open the government, and there are only 53 Republicans. You see, the Democrats rely on stupid people to stay in power, and they know there are enough of them to get by with lying and trying to convince Americans that it is the Republicans at fault, when in fact that is impossible. Numerically, that's impossible. Folks, you need to spread the truth. Idiots are allowed to vote, and when they do, it is never in your favor, and they always default to what is wrong. Here's another gift that the Democrats and Biden gave you. Foreign illegals were given CDLs, that's commercial truck driver's licenses, when they couldn't even speak English. As you know, if you've been paying attention, horrific accidents and deaths have been occurring on our highways because of these illegals who were unqualified to drive these big rigs. Just recently, 7,500 foreign drivers who could not pass the English test were removed from the roadways by the Trump administration. I think the Democrats that allowed this need to be indicted, tried, and convicted. We can start with the gay Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Also, shame on the corporate types that put Americans at risk in the first place, who were heading up these companies and these trucking companies that hired them. This is where there must be accountability for the corporate types that make these decisions. They are corporate whores. They are whores for the money. They must lose their jobs. These big rigs are dangerous, and even more so now that aliens who can't even speak English are driving them. And they're not qualified. You have to have qualified drivers to drive these big rigs safely. But this is just one more example of what the Democrats did to this country in handing out thousands of certificates to illegal aliens who were unqualified to drive dangerous equipment. Now, to my friend Rand Paul, I've been your friend for years and carried a lot of water for you in some of the political fights here at home. But when you join Democrats to oppose Trump's positions on things, that is where the friendship stops. You have taken positions where you are the only Republican supporting it, and it is usually against the president. What that tells me is that your position is not a solution, and at the very least, you are a poor salesman when you can't get other Republicans to sign on to your position. Recently, you expressed your opposition to the president's taking out drug boats from Venezuela heading to the United States. Have you forgotten? The communist regime in Venezuela has been spreading their toxic and deadly Marxist philosophy across South America. I understand your libertarian philosophy, but it will not win this chess game, and philosophies don't win against brutes, and there are no do-overs in this situation. In this political chess game, don't be so blind and rigidly beholden to philosophies in the midst of an existential war that you stubbornly pursue a losing strategy. You don't seem to know who the enemy of freedom is. You are becoming alienated from your Kentucky constituents and making Kentucky an enemy to the White House, which your constituents supported by well over 60%. Stop this foolish crusade, as it will not do you well in Kentucky, and the red voters in Kentucky will turn you out. Here's one of my favorite analysts, and that is Dr. David Hanson. He's a great intellect, and I want to say thank you to him. As I have been telling all of you for months, the Democrats are actually like the old Confederacy. Well, Hanson is now saying the same thing. Dr. Hanson for the Daily Signal is quoted as following, quote, "We're starting to see a Neo-Confederate nullification movement among the contemporary left in general, in particularly the Democrat Party. In other words, there are governors like Governor Pritzker of Illinois, Governor Newsom of California, and Governor Tina Kotek of Oregon, who openly, literally, candidly say that federal immigration law shall not be enforced in their jurisdictions, their state, county, and local municipalities. Pam Bondi, book them, cuff them, make them do the perk walk, and indict them and put them on trial. This is treason, and this is a direct felonious violation of federal law." Obviously, these people haven't read Article 6 of the Constitution. It says explicitly that in matters of the enforcement of federal authority and jurisdiction, which is the United States, it supersedes local law enforcement. This ties in with my warning about a Civil War 2.0, and those things happen when one side doesn't believe that it'll happen, and they ignore it. They ignore the signs. You know, Christ referenced how we pay attention to some signs, but ignore the signs of the time. And we are ignoring the signs of the coming end of time. I'm warning you so that you don't have to lose your sons and daughters to a bloody civil war, and it will be bloody because of the rage and hatred that seethes within the liberal and leftist hearts. I've been around too long, and I know what they are capable of, and rationality is not one of them. Hear me out here. They have such a depraved mind that they are convinced that the only way they can live in peace is with you dead. That is conservative, Christian, Republican, ordinary common sense Americans. I read an article long ago where Obama and Clinton inquired as to how many Americans would have to die to turn this country into a dictatorship. The approximation was 34 million would have to perish in this country for that to happen. Well, think about this. Biden imported an army, and they have all the foreign criminals that came across the border and 1 million Muslims in New York City and up in Michigan. That's their army. The radical left's troops are already here, folks. Wake up from your denial and delusion. Your Constitution won't help you. Former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Scalia laughed about people's over-reliance on a piece of paper that has to be interpreted, that is the Constitution. And today, one of those interpreters on the U.S. Supreme Court could not even define what a woman was. Yeah, that was a Biden appointee. Now, how much faith do you have in that document? Here is the face of another lunatic leftist who wanted to kill ICE agents. This man in Fort Myers, Florida, is accused of making online death threats against U.S. immigration, customs, and enforcement officers. Does he look like the kind of person you could have any rational conversation with? Look at him. I can practically smell this guy through this photo. And just given the looks of him, would you expect anything different? Folks, the leftists rage. They have a psychotic rage, and they're dangerous. And I keep telling you that and warning you of it. Now here's more Marxism for you, and a picture of what it looks like. Here is Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago. At least 23 people were shot last weekend, 2 of them fatally, across Democrat-run Chicago. based upon all of Mayor Johnson's campaign rhetoric, the things that he has said, and his policies. Folks, he's a communist and a black racist at that. There is no truth that resides in this man. What's sad is that he is the face of the Democrat Party. So what do you do about it? You shame everyone within your circles of influence about their support for Democrats because they all support one another and the Democrat platform. There is no distinction between Democrats. Even if there were, the corrupt ones are in charge and you cannot afford to lend aid to them. There is no daylight between the Democrats and their platform. So what's your job? What's your action plan? You need to speak out. Let me make it real clear for you, and particularly Christians. If you don't speak out against evil, then you fear man more than you do God. In that case, you have every good cause to question your own salvation. Christians do not tolerate evil. Christians are not timid. Remember, if you don't proclaim Christ before others, then Christ will not proclaim you before his Father on Judgment Day. This doesn't apply only to accepting Christ as your Savior. The Bible is filled with instances where you stand up for the faith and against evil. Now, I'm not trying to give a sermon here, but the principles apply across the board as we are drowning in a sea of corruption between politicians and the media in our bureaucracy, and it is by default. What do I mean by that? It means that it was allowed to happen. We allowed it. Good people allowed it to happen. There was and is no accountability, and good people are tolerating it as they are just too comfortable to be bothered by it. They are too comfortable to bother themselves. This end result is that they will lose everything. Okay, now let's move on to one of my favorite topics of late. Now, I know for a lot of you, you don't think what goes on in Kentucky doesn't affect you, but when it comes to federal offices, what happens in other states does matter. Well, Representative Massie from Kentucky's 4th Congressional District is in the news again. He loves the TV cameras so he can tell you what solutions he doesn't have, and so he can pretend to be a Republican but sides with the Democrats. Well, after a facial and wardrobe makeover, he's gotten remarried. Massie wasted no time in courting and marrying a former staffer for Senator Rand Paul 1 year after his wife passed away. He served raw milk, not pasteurized, to guests along with the cake. Another wacko idea. You know, there's a very good reason why you pasteurize milk. It keeps people from dying. Anyway, this rogue pretend Republican who with pride touts his libertarianism and seizes every opportunity to oppose Trump. As Vice President Vance recently stated at the Charlie Kirk gathering down in Mississippi, he says Massie takes every opportunity to oppose Trump. Now let me remind everyone that the reason we have a Nancy Pelosi leftist governor in deep red Kentucky is because of the libertarians like Massie, who stated after the Republican defeat that they were proud of it and that they found Republican tears so sweet. Next May, Kentuckians will have an opportunity to return Massie back to his farm where he can sell all the raw milk that he wants. Try this bit of news on for size. It seems like the Democrat left doesn't like Trump blowing up drug boats heading for America. Well, that's no surprise. I want you to think on this. The drugs on those boats that were blown up had some Americans' death sentence on it, and Trump just saved hundreds of American lives. Now, no one should be surprised when Senator Von Hollen, seen here sipping margaritas with Garcia, an illegal MS-13 gang member that Trump wanted deported. Von Hollen was more concerned and mad about this gang member being deported to El Salvador, which was his home country, than he was Americans, and is now concerned about Trump saving American lives by stopping drug boats bringing drugs into the country. Now, of course, Von Hollen is from deep, dark blue Maryland, another mindless leftist state and home of Baltimore, another crime-ridden city in this country run by a 100% totally black Democrat administration. So one by one, I'm decloaking the Democrat left, leaving them nowhere to hide and depriving you, your friends and family from any excuse as to why they should sinfully vote for the evil that exists within the Democrat Party. Okay, well, that'll do for today. Remember, get online and look up your congressman and senator, both federally and in your state, and give them an earful. You have no excuse. Their contact information is online. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.